Hey guys, it's Tori, and today I'm going to be doing my June wrap-up. So, I'm sorry about the lighting, and I'm sorry if I sound congested. I have been sick. I actually filmed this video already, but the audio was all weird when I went to edit it, and so I have to redo it, which is partly why it's so late in the month. And then I got sick, so it took even longer to refilm it than I had hoped. I'm still pretty sick. I didn't set up my lighting because, first of all, I was just too tired to do that. Second of all, my glasses have a glare, and so I try not to wear them. Sometimes I'm able to set up my lighting so it doesn't glare on my glasses, but recently it's, for some reason, I don't even know how I did it before, but it's been glaring a lot more recently, the way I've been doing it here at home. And today, my eyes have been I've been sick, so my eyes have not loved the contact feeling. So I had to wear my glasses, so I didn't set up lighting because I didn't want the glare, and I was too tired. Anyway, I'm finally filming my June wrap-up, or refilming it, and I read some good books. I only ended up reading 3, which is a little less than I usually do. Towards the end of the month, I was working on a really long book that I didn't technically finish till July, so I'll mention it in my July wrap-up. But anyway, let's just get into the books. So the first book I finished this month was Obsidio by Amie Kaufman and Kristoff. I won't go into too much detail on this book since I've already been talking about this series for the past few months on my channel and a lot of videos, I feel like. But I really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I guess it would be more like a 4.75. On Goodreads I gave it a 5 stars because, you know, every extra star helps authors. I think this is actually, upon this reread, having read them straight through or listened to them on audiobook all together instead of kind of separated by a few years due to publishing dates and stuff. Gosh, the lighting is so bad, but this is the only place I can be. I'm so sorry. Anyway, the reason why I think it's probably my favorite out of all of the 3 is because of Aiden. As you know, as you can probably tell, I love Aiden, the crazy artificial intelligence computer in these books, and you get so much more Aiden in this while already loving him. I feel like in the first one you get a good deal of Aiden, but you haven't fallen in love with him yet until towards the end, so you don't get much of him when you love him in the first one. And then Gemini, he's not in as much, so Obsidio, he was in it a lot more and you already love him, so it was just so much fun. Again, I think the one drawback for this series, for me, is I don't love the characters besides Aiden. I feel like they talk like they're mature, but they don't act like it, and I feel like all their relationships are the same. They're all very touchy, all very full of sexual innuendos every time they talk, and all very cheesy and angsty, which is fine, but if there's like 3 major relationships throughout the series and they all feel exactly the same. And I didn't love that. It's okay, I still love this series. I think it's a lot of fun, and as usual, I highly suggest listening to the audiobook if you can, because they're amazing, and they're, like, seriously, living in a Star Trek movie, just listening to them in the car and stuff, it's so fun. Next, I was able to pick up a couple of classics this month, which was really awesome that the majority of books I read this month were classics. The first one being Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. I absolutely loved this. I think I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. If you don't know what Treasure Island is about, if you've seen Treasure Planet, this is what it's based off of, if you didn't know that. But basically we followed this boy, Jim Hawkins, whose family owns an inn, and they end up taking in this pirate man for several months, and he just kind of wanders around, does his thing. They kind of just put up with him. But eventually he ends up being killed and attacked by these former crewmates of his. Amongst his things, Jim Hawkins finds this map to Treasure Island, which is this island that is said to have been the home of the hoard of treasure stolen by Captain Flint, who was this notorious pirate. So Jim Hawkins, as well as the squire and this doctor, decide to put together a crew, get a ship, and go and follow this map and find this treasure. And unfortunately, they end up picking up, for some of their crew members, some very greedy people, including John Silver, who has quickly become one of my favorite characters of all time. He is very greedy. He's clearly very evil in that sense of he's a pirate, but he has this strange fondness for Jim Hawkins, and that Jim Hawkins returns, and their relationship is so interesting. I feel like Treasure Planet really focused in on that. If you've seen that movie, I love that Disney movie. I feel like they did a great job focusing in on that relationship, and I really appreciate that. And it was just a fun ride. One thing that threw me out of the story a little bit, I will say though, is the fact that a lot of the classic, like, cliche pirate things, like the man with the peg leg and the parrots and Shiver Me Timbers and all those things, are very prevalent in this book. That being said, this is the original source material for all those cliches, so I feel like I can't really set that against the book itself, because when this was written, it wasn't cliche, it was new. It was a new, the original source material, like I said, so, but it did throw me out of the book a little bit. I have read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, also by Robert Louis Stevenson, and I think, in comparing the two, which one I liked better, I feel like the process of reading Treasure Island was more interesting. There was just more action going on. This is definitely more of a plot-driven book, whereas Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is very much more character-driven, and so it's a little harder to get into and it's a little slower paced, but like finishing both of them and looking back, I think I liked the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde a little bit better. Then again, that one's written for adults more than this one is, so that probably plays a role in why I personally, at my age, enjoy Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde a little bit more. But I did, like I said, think this was a lot of fun. 3.5 stars. Definitely recommend. You end up smiling the whole way through because you just feel like a child again reading it, and I really enjoyed that. And the last book I ended up picking up this month was The Hand of Ethelberta by Thomas Hardy. This is my 4th Thomas Hardy that I've read, and I absolutely loved it. This follows a woman named Ethelberta whose family is from the lowest of the low classes. Her father's a butler, her brothers are carpenters, but she ends up secretly marrying this gentleman who ends up dying 3 weeks after their marriage. Her mother-in-law agrees to take care of her so long as she cuts off communication with her family below stairs. So she does. She sees them every once in a while, but she really separates herself from them. This is meant to be a satire of some of the social customs between classes that were prevalent during the time when this was written, the late 1800s, and it did such a good job of that. We see Ethelberta as she ends up writing a book of poetry that becomes very popular under a pseudonym, and then she also ends up becoming like an oral storyteller. There's also a love shape in here. There's 4 men, but before that turns you off from this book, something you need to recognize about Thomas Hardy is when he has love shapes, this is the second one by him that I've read that has included a love shape of any kind. This was written during a time where marriage meant security, it meant rising in status, and especially for women. And so when you're reading this, it's not so much, the choice between men is not so much I love all of them, I care about all of them, and I just don't know which one I love the most. It's about, what do I want out of life? Do I want that social security? Do I want to rise in status? Or do I want to marry for love, even though he's a poorer man? I remained intrigued right up to the very end. Literally, you get to the epilogue, and you still don't know how things are gonna end up. Like, you have a few pages left, and I was like, there are not enough pages for everything that needs to happen. But I read the epilogue, and I actually found myself very satisfied with the ending. It did not go the way I expected at all. And I loved that. I found Ethelberta to be an incredible character. She was really interesting because I got to this point like halfway through the book where I was like, I just don't understand Ethelberta's motives. I couldn't get a grasp on who she was and what she wanted out of life. And it took me a second to realize that the reason why I was feeling that way was because Ethelberta didn't know what she wanted out of life. She was really struggling with figuring out what her motivations were. Was she going to marry for the sake of raising her social status, despite the fact that she felt, you can tell she really wants to feel valued, meaning she's very intelligent, she's very strong-willed, and so you can tell that she wants to participate in the running of her household beyond just taking care of the servants, but as many women did back then, but she wanted to take part in making money and then going out there. She writes a book of poetry to sell. She performs for money. You can tell that she likes to feel valued. She likes to be valuable in that way. But the higher she goes in society, the less likely it will be that she'll be able to participate and be valuable in a household in that way. I feel like at the end, despite the fact that she didn't end up where I thought she would, I feel like she really ended up with what she wanted deep down, and that she figured out what she wanted out of life. And as the reader, you find out with her what exactly she was looking for. And I absolutely loved that. Highly recommend this. I could see people saying that this is one of Hardy's more boring novels, as it's not quite as intense as some of his other books. It doesn't have quite as intense scenes, but it's still really enjoyable. I found the characters to be wonderful, and like I said, 5 out of 5 stars, definitely a new favorite of mine. And that is it. Sorry again about the lighting. Maybe, I think I might be filming another video today, and I'll probably try to find another place to do it so I can actually look not yellow, but my yellow shirt doesn't help. But anyway, let me know down below some books you've been reading recently, as I would love to know, especially if there's books that you've read recently that you really loved and have become new favorites. I always love a good book recommendation. And I will see you next time. Bye!